Hello. If you're watching this recording, then I'm dead. Or in Melbourne. I just got up. I'm flying there now. But, you know, if it crashes, then this might be the last time that we ever see each other. The reason that I am going to Melbourne is because I'm doing some shows there. I've got very few tickets left. You can get them. You can also get tickets to Port Macquarie and Sydney. The point is, we had a wild night last night. That's right. We watched the debate together on the stream, and we decided to post the highlights to you in very chopped fashion. So, here's the rules. Have fun. How could you not? And second, can you not be so cruel to me? Oh, Friendly Geordie's got a fact wrong when he's talking impromptu for 4 hours. Actually, wait, do be cruel. It's just more engagement for me.
Working their guts out, working second, third jobs, paying tax. I want to make sure that that taxpayer dollar is being spent efficiently. Where you balloon the public service in Canberra, that is not an efficient use of taxpayers' money.
You do seem to be having... And you know what is an efficient use of taxpayer money? Paying double the amount for consultants to do exactly the same thing. There's a couple of reasons that they use consultants, just so you know. The first one is that a consultant is a yes man. In the public service, they'll say, because they're all little artists, but that doesn't tick up with the bucks that I had. I need it to tick up with the bucks. It doesn't tick up with the bucks. And so they'll stop you from doing a bunch of the insane things. They also, when you are in the public service, you are usually way too good for the private sector. You go into the public service, usually, you have some sort of civic duty, and that's not worth as much as money to you. If you're a complete sellout, you go into the consultancy world and you would get more of what you're listening to. You get paid double the amount. Literally, you get paid double the amount. We've kind of figured it out from looking at the United States and the UK of what happens when you decimate the public service. That's what happens. And here's the other thing. All of the orders saying, we need our own Doge. We need our Doge. If you need your Doge, you're looking at it right here with, you know, the Italian stallion over here, Mr. Albanese. You know how much the Liberals spent on consultants? $20 billion. What was it? Maybe 3 Gonskis? I'm going to have to go back and check what the price was, but I think we could all agree it's a little bit more than I earn in a year, you know? You want a Doge that gets rid of government efficiency and red tape. The biggest red tape there is consultants. Yes, sometimes there is a use for consultants, obviously. You're probably going to be spending a few billion on it, not $20 billion.
You've said a lot of areas where you won't. What about foreign aid? Would you cut foreign aid?
We've said in relation to the public service that we will protect frontline positions, which I think is important, incredibly important. And we've announced more funding for GPs into general practice, and there are many other areas
so
that you could cite.
This is the question. Where do you cut?
Where we find inefficiency, David, and it's not something you can do from opposition to redesign the public service and the way in which that structure works.
He's got a point there. Yeah, there's things that you're certainly limited to do with the opposition, but you would be able to say where you're going to cut. Government is not that much of a mystery. If I wanted to cut government services from not even the opposition benches, I'd be able to sit there and say, do we really need this fire department?
Is foreign aid going to be cut?
Well, we haven't made any announcements in relation to foreign aid, and there's a lot of good that we're doing in foreign aid. And the principle that we've had, like any good Liberal government, like John Howard when he came in 96 after Keating had done so much damage, we will make sure that we're spending taxpayers' money efficiently. Okay. And whatever we can give back, we will, which is why we've said that to deal with the crisis that Anthony's created.
Just so you know, a big portion of why the Albanese government was able to accomplish 2 out of 3 budget surpluses is because he cut back on consultants. The problem is, government doesn't go away. It still needs to be done. Emergency services still need to be coordinated. Dams still need to be built. It's just who's going to build them, public servants or private servants.
That's before they get to the $600 billion they need for their nuclear reactors.
Damn!
I mean,
Bam! Tell them, Albo!
It rolls off your lips like it's true.
There are agreements that they have. Well, he won't say where the cuts will be. It's vote for me and just trust us. We'll tell you after the election. Well, we know what happened last time. The cuts came to health, they came to education, $50 billion out of hospitals, $30 billion out of schools. That's why, a decade later, we're still trying to fix and repair the damage that was done by that 2014 budget.
He's definitely right. Do you guys remember that? That was shocking, woeful. It is why education standards have declined so much over the last decade. It's why we have this Medicare disaster that we have now. It's because they cut an obscene amount, $80 billion of cuts. Like, man, they were doing Doge before it was cool.
A lot of people say, where's the serious reform? You know, Keating floating the dollar, Howard's GST. Mr. Albanese, what's the one big change you'd like to be remembered for?
Affordable childcare is one of the things that we're doing. We've already put measures in place including in this term, we'll get rid of the activity test, a 3-day guarantee for childcare, boosting infrastructure for childcare. We want the universal provision of affordable childcare so that it is as natural to have your child have access to childcare as it is to have access to a public
Mr.
school.
Dutton,
See, this is why I don't like the debate format. Whenever you look at debates, especially leadership debates, unless you are ensconced in politics all the time, it's all just gibberish. It makes a lot of sense why, 7,000 people are watching this, and most of them are the fat-catching camp are sitting there thinking, am I going to get fired? Is he going to win? That's mostly who's watching this stuff, right? But I will say this. It is a true crime that Anthony Albanese, because of the media bias that we have in this country, because the new media seems to just reflect the old media, they will not acknowledge, because they just everyone needs to keep up the narrative that Labor's shit, Labor never does anything, it sucks, when in reality, this government passed 3 of the most important social fabric holding together aspects of this society that we have. Medicare, introduced by Hawke Keating, NDIS, introduced tentatively by the Gillard government, but really started by the Rudd government. And now, under Albanese, we have universal childcare. The reason that universal childcare is so important is it's an economic thing. This is not about lazy parents going, hey, yeah, there you go, kids, I'm going golfing. I mean, sure, they will be doing that, absolutely. But the thing is that when you have universal childcare, you have more economic productivity. You have people that are able to get back into the workforce quicker. Usually, otherwise, you just have parents that have to stay at home and look after the kids, right? If they're good parents. Otherwise, they could just be neglectful, shitty parents. But that's the other thing that's really good about it. It's because early education is formative years for the human brain. And if you have people there that are just basically teachers for early education go, do you know what this color is? And they can't figure out what it is. And they go, well, maybe this one should go to the dumb class. You know, that is very good for the future of this country. You are fostering brains at the most pivotal point. You are creating a generation that will be smarter than the last one because you have universal childcare there to make sure that they are getting the brain fuel that they need at that age, as opposed to just letting the market decide, which is whether you have a shit parent or not. University is not the important thing to fund. If you're going to privatize anything in the educational course structure, that would be the one that you would go. I mean, it's obviously stupid to get rid of any of it, right? But if you're going to publicly fund things, publicly funding what you really want to do is early education far more than you would want like free university. Early childhood education is absolutely the priority out of those. And this guy wants to cut it. The ghoul in the corner, again, as he's always doing, lurking in the shadows again. Go, Daddy. I mean, I love him. I do honestly like how ghoulish he is. Well, this is my turn to speak. This guy in the corner, he wants to cut early childhood education. This is a massive Labor accomplishment. And again, no one knows this because when you are watching one of these debates, they just get to say early childhood education, 3 days guaranteed. No one really stops to think about what that really means for the country.
Energy is the economy, David. Everything we use, everything around us is either running or has been created because of the use of energy.
Yeah, coal does keep the lights on. But it kind of does, you know, like there's no modern world without it, so he's got us there. And also, how good is this? He is the perfect spokesperson for energy is everything, because his head looks like a light bulb.
Everything that we rely on in our society, in a modern society like ours, relies on energy. And what we've said is that we want to create an East Coast gas reserve, so that will bring gas that we're exporting at the moment beyond the foundation contracts back into the domestic market. If we do that, that increases supply, it addresses Labor's disastrous energy policy, and it will help bring the cost pressures down across society. By the independent analysis, reduces the cost of wholesale gas by 23%, structural change in the economy. We go beyond that, of course, as you know, to deal with what firms up the renewables as we go forward, which is a vision that Bob Hawke had for our country, that John Howard shared, and that I certainly strongly believe in, and that is a zero emissions nuclear technology embraced by the Labor Party in the United Kingdom. It's embraced by the French, by many other countries around the world. In fact, Australia is the only one of the top 20 economies that hasn't signed up to or isn't already using
is that
nuclear.
Just to check the reality on that, there are some other G20 economies that don't have nuclear.
Well, Indonesia is one I think that the ABC cited before, and you've seen the comments from the Indonesian president that they are fully on board with nuclear. If you have a look at what's happening in the UK, Keir Starmer says, the Labor Prime Minister there says that they can't achieve their net zero by 2050 targets without the use of nuclear.
Yeah, but buddy, it's a completely different ball game in the UK because they have all of this investment and infrastructure put into nuclear power since what, the 40s, 50s? It's also a really shitty little drab island with no sunlight whatsoever. They've got the coast that's really good for wind. There's a little difference between Australia and the United Kingdom. One is that we're a lot bigger, and two, I don't know if you figured this out from how many skin cancers there are, and also how tanned these cunts are. Look at them. It's like they've been in a solarium. That's just what everyone looks like in Australia except me, because I never go outside.
I'm a friend of Keir Starmer, and what Keir Starmer's having to deal with is the blowout in the costs of the Hinkley nuclear plant. It's now up to $90 billion for one plant. It is coming in 14 years late, and it's being built in a country that does have a nuclear industry. It's being built by the world's largest nuclear energy company from France. That shows exactly the problem. And Keir Starmer wishes, as do so many people, that they had the access with the solar resources, with the wind resources, with the space that we have here in Australia to have renewables backed by gas, backed by hydro, and backed by batteries.
So this is the problem. I wish that the average Australian was forced to watch the debates. I don't think that it would rush by with anyone, because I'm just thinking back to when I wasn't that into politics, and I'd watch this and I'd say, oh, they both sound the same, I'm just getting a better vibe off it. But I think that you get the general gist that Anthony Albanese has a well thought out answer, whereas Dutton is kind of just selling you this pamphlet gloss. Labor is always just trying to address problems in the real world, and they are saying these are the problems, yeah? These are the problems, and this is the way that we are going to go forward with those problems. What Peter Dutton is trying to do is sell you a fantasy. So you can see that in the different responses. One person is trying to address reality, another person is trying to fudge it.
A lot of people want more detail about your plans, Mr. Dutton. One of the concerns is water. Nuclear power needs a lot more water than coal-fired power. Where will the water come from?
Well, David, there are already water allocations to each of the 7 sites that we've located. So coal-fired generation uses a lot of water now.
But you need more for nuclear.
No, we've looked at the water allocation for each of those sites.
You don't think you need any more than...
We're comfortable with the analysis that we've done. Frontier Economics is the most preeminent economist on energy in this country, used by the Labor Party, and this hasn't been questioned or hasn't been disputed by Chris Bowen or Anthony Albanese or Jim Chalmers. The independent analysis says that our model...
I really wish that we could kill the word independent. Independent is right up there with left, right, socialist, progressive. And the other thing is, everybody just says independent because they like the idea of identifying as an independent. I've seen the research on this. Over the years, the amount of people that sign up as an independent in the United States grows and grows and grows and grows, but they still vote, don't they? And they still vote in exactly the same patterns that they always had. The idea that people sit there and just independently take in information is just, it's complete farce. And I hate as well that independents can just write off the brand that they're independent when they're completely bought and sold by billionaires in almost every case, right?
It is $263 billion less. Well, just let me finish this point. $263 billion less than the government's own model. So that makes the government's model roughly $600 billion. Where's that coming from?
So if anything, it's you that actually cost $600 billion, according to my friends at a consultancy firm. And it's independent.
Just to be clear, you're saying no additional water is required. All those experts who say you'd need more for nuclear,
well, David, there are a couple of points. I mean, we could spend all night on what I think is really important.
After, Mr.
Yes,
Dutton.
but there are different, depending on the small modular reactor as well, and obviously the size of the reactor.
They don't operate everywhere.
This is the other thing. I hate this about the whole nuclear debate because it's always just based on the premise of technology that doesn't exist yet. Science fiction. That's how they get to their conclusions here. They imagine that a reactor that isn't online anywhere and is commercially operating anywhere on planet Earth is operating at some point in the future. Greens and Liberals do this all the time. They promise things that they know they can't deliver. If these parties were companies, the ACCC would drag them to court for false advertising.
Why?
But the large reactors you're talking about in Queensland, you've got one plan for Callide, one for Tarong. They'd be large nuclear reactors.
We have looked at each of the sites and we've done the analysis on the water allocations that are there now.
So are you saying they'd be small modular reactors?
I'm saying that there is a mix, as we've said, which starts in 2035 to 37.
Go Spears. Now, man, you know it is dire straits when David Spears is flaming you.
He signed up to nuclear power for our submariners. And the Prime Minister, again, it's another example of just complete dishonesty in a debate which I think is worth having between adults.
I'm just trying to get some clarity on your plans here, Mr. Dutton. Just a moment. If local communities, be they local farmers or local communities where you've earmarked these nuclear plants to go, if they say no, what happens? Do you override them?
Well, David, the Commonwealth obviously has powers and we can exercise those powers if need be, but we can work with the state governments. In South Australia, the South Australian Premier has been very clear of his support for nuclear, as many figures within the union movement and in the Labor Party have as well.
So you'd override those concerns?
We'll work to find consensus.
Use Commonwealth
if we
powers
can't find consensus, then we'll do what's in our country's best interest.
Damn, dude. That is pretty goddamn baller that I wasn't expecting Dutton to outright say. You got to give it to the Libs. They do just say very threatening things on a whim all the time. They're saying, if you don't like nukes, too bad. We're building them anyway. We're going to override the powers of the state. When it comes to the Labor Party, they always have to be really measured because they're constantly scared of getting slammed by the press all the time. So they can't ever say anything like that ever. But I really hunger for the days of Keating where it'd just be like, nah, fuck you, we're going for it.
Prime Minister?
He dropped out the word green hydrogen. Right, this used to be the underpinning, the base load requirement,
We'll get to
which
the
now,
PM's
of course,
plans.
is not a commercial reality.
Look, in fairness to Dutton, I will say this. The green hydrogen thing it's not a fantasy, but it is not commercially viable and nowhere near as green as we thought the green hydrogen would turn out to be. The problem is, and I will say this, small modular nuclear reactors, thorium, what's the other one that are always doing? Fusion. These things have been talked about since the 70s. There's been no real development on it, really. When it comes to green hydrogen, when it comes to even carbon capture storage and all that kind of stuff, there has been advances in this. There is promise that this technology will one day come forward. But yes, he is correct in saying that it is not online yet. And if Anthony Albanese is using that as a foundation for his targets, which I don't think he is, because there's been a bunch of organisations that have come out, government and non-government, that have said, no, they are absolutely on track for 82% renewable. Maybe the estimates are coming to sort of like maybe an economic output that's going to happen or something. Look, I think Dutton might have a point on that. I would have to double check. But yes, if there's a lot of underpinning on green hydrogen, it's not to where we think it is. What is white hydrogen, which is mined in South Australia, which is going to be a big cash cow for us.
Some elements of the renewables rollout, particularly offshore wind in places like the Hunter in New South Wales. What do you say to those locals and those local community concerns? Are you overriding them as well?
Well, that's why you need proper community consultation and environmental approvals. Some of the concern is not real. Whales being unable to steer their way around in the vast Pacific Ocean around a wind tower.
Oh, I thought you cared about the whales. You're lying about the fact that they don't navigate into the wind turbine and jump into it and get chopped up like the birds? Classic Albo. Albanese.
Can I make this point? Peter won't say the fact.
I'm just waiting to stick to your plans here, Mr Albanese.
Every single state and territory government, none of them will support it, not just the LNP. The Liberal Party here in New South Wales, the Liberal Party in Victoria don't support it, but that's not what's important. The most important thing is the private sector won't back it. That's why it has to be government-owned.
Can I stick to your plans now, Mr Albanese? You and Chris Bowen keep saying that renewables are the cheapest form of power. When will we see our power bills come down?
They are.
You know what's interesting? I saw some AEMO figures the other day. I can't remember how much it is by, but it was an astronomical amount. Your power bills have gone up under the Liberals over the last 10 years by something around the likes of 130%. Under Labor, they've gone down 1.5%, and this during the global cost of living crisis. Now, they said that they were going to get your power bills down by, I can't remember what it was, $250, something like that. But there was huge economic headwinds that caused everything to go up. What they were modelling, you can't model for, is there just going to be some random point where inflation just spikes like a goddamn pin? You don't really factor those things in. You just go, based on the trajectory, here's where it's going to go. I mean, it's an imperfect science, but that's what we have. And that didn't happen. And the worst thing happened of all time for power bill prices, which is everything became more expensive. Because as Peter Dutton pointed out, everything in the modern world is made from electricity. So everything became more expensive. The demand for electricity went through the roof. That's why we have these prices.
What we know is that renewables are the cheapest form of power, not because of what we say, but because of what the Australian Energy Market Operator says.
So when do the bills come down?
And what the market is delivering. During the former government, 24 out of 28 coal-fired power stations announced their closure. We need to get supply and certainty and energy security. We can't wait to the 2040s
under
for
your plan,
a nuclear plant.
Just stick with your plan, Mr Albanese. When will the bills come down?
Under our plan, we know that renewables are the cheapest form of power, and that is why we are doing that, rolling it out, including through gas. Peter raised gas. Gas is now $13. It was $30.
And when does it get cheaper?
When we came off, 13 is cheaper than 30.
When do we see the bills come down?
Well, what we need to do is to roll out renewables, make sure there's energy security, make sure it's backed up by batteries, by hydro and by gas. That is what all of the private sector is backing and investing in, not using taxpayers' money to fund something that they never put forward the entire time they were in office. Meanwhile, coal-fired power stations, including the one in Callide at the moment, one of these nuclear sites has broken down and isn't in operation at the moment.
Some states are extending the life of these coal-fired power stations.
That is what is causing the increase in prices, is because of the uncertainty created by...
You're saying they shouldn't be doing it?
No, they need to ensure energy security. But what shouldn't have happened was 24 out of 28 coal-fired power stations announced their closure and no support, energy security during that time. And we can't afford to wait for the 2040s.
Okay, let me ask you both a question about climate change. We get a lot of questions about the concerns that people have over more intense weather events, be it storms, fires, floods, particularly in your home state, Queensland, Mr Dutton. Do you accept that we are already seeing the impact of climate change?
Well, David, there's an impact. The question is what we can do about it as a population of 27 million people. So we should be good corporate citizens, good international neighbours, etc. But at the moment, China is building 2 coal-fired power stations a week. India obviously is burning a lot of fossil fuel. And what the government's doing, and Chris Bowen gave us...
Sorry, can we stick with your plans again here, Mr Dutton? I understand the propensity to get stuck into each other. You're agreeing we are seeing the impact of climate change?
I think you can see that there's an impact, David, but I don't... In my home state, you made reference to floods and natural disasters events. We were out in Thargomindah the other day.
Yeah, but you weren't there for the cyclone, were you, Dut? You weren't there then. You were with your mate Justin Hebbs. We got you, but we all just have to remember that was shameful, wasn't it? While Anthony Albanese was coordinating the cyclone effort for his own seat of Dixon that it was going to hit, while he was coordinating that, making sure that it didn't, Dutton was out of his electorate, ensuring that he had the funds to contest it in the next re-election by hanging out with Justin Hebbs, the biggest douchebag billionaire we have by a mile. I hate him more than Gina Reinhardt, his stupid little hippie ponytail. Hashtag humble. I saw him put that on his Instagram once. Hashtag humble.
Is it getting worse, though? Is it getting worse?
Well, I'll leave others to...
What do you think? You're a Queenslander?
Well, I'll let scientists and others pass that judgment, but...
Really? You're not willing to say this is climate change happening right now?
Well, as the Prime Minister refused to do the other day to make comment in this regard as well, I don't know, David, because I'm not a scientist and I can't tell you whether the temperature has risen in Thargomindah as a result of climate change or that the water levels are up in Thargomindah's latest flood as a result of climate change. And I think the honest answer for most people is that they don't know. Look,
really not a bad answer, honestly. It's not bad. When you go down to a local level and instead of just sitting there and saying like, oh yeah, you know, it's obviously increased the global temperature and all that kind of stuff, if you just sit there and say, look, I don't know, I'm not a scientist, I'm talking about the temperature of south central Queensland, I'm not sure. This is not my area of expertise. It's actually a pretty good answer.
What I need to do as the alternate Prime Minister in this country is to put forward our plan about how we're going to help families. We need to transition, and we've spoken about that with our zero emissions technology. But in relation to power costs, which I think is a really important issue before we move on, the Prime Minister promised $275 reduction per year at the last election. It has never eventuated. He never mentions the figure. And at least Chris Bowen was able to give you a straighter answer than what you just heard before, because power prices have gone up by $1,300 and they are making no commitments in this election, other than if you vote Labor, your electricity and your gas prices will go higher.
We've moved away from the impact of climate change a little there, but Mr Albanese, we do know that people in a lot of these areas where we're seeing more severe impacts are really worried about the impact on their insurance premiums. One of our audience members, Ross, lives in Ballina. 3 years ago, his premium was less than $3,000. Now it's more than $6,000. I mean, that's unaffordable for many.
I mean, doesn't that just say the quality of these two parties pretty well for all the bozos out there? There's no difference between them. This is what David Spears has to ask Anthony Albanese to get him on climate change. What about insurance premiums going up as a result of climate change? What is your policy specifically to insurance policy on climate change? A very specific industry. That's his gotcha question for that. His gotcha question for Dutton is, do you think climate change is real? We stand to make so much money in the era of climate change. And you are robbing this nation's future if you are not investing in the grandiose vision of Australia, which is future made in Australia. Only the Labor Party is delivering that. That is a baby of the unions. They're the ones that are putting it forward so that we become a good Saudi Arabia. Not only are they not going to go ahead with future made in Australia, they'll scrap it immediately when they get in. Not only that, they're replacing it with a huge white elephant of a fantasy, which is nuclear power, all to just keep coal pumping into the air as much as possible. Which is, look, yeah, okay, it won't have a global impact on climate change if you keep pumping coal into the air. But what is bad about it is that is denying us a far more efficient energy grid, which, as Peter Dutton correctly points out, that's the spice of life now. That is our spice melange in Dune. Everything comes from energy, and you are making a 21st century energy grid that is not only smarter, but is able to get energy more efficiently to the places that it needs to go, and is able to provide far more energy than coal is. Anyway, that is going to greatly stymie our economy in itself. Not only that, but Labor has a plan to just export. It's so visionary and exciting. Nothing makes me sadder than the fact that the media is so stupid that they never talk about future made in Australia. I don't even think they understand what it is. Nobody seems to understand the great vision of what this is. It's setting up a manufacturing base in this country. I just read the other day that when we did have a manufacturing base in this country, it was 25% employment. That was obviously taken out because the manufacturing base was making socks. And China can do that better. So it was just like, let's put all of our money and workers into making a shit product that no one wants to buy. That's a good idea. But now we have an opportunity to bring that back. Something that used to employ a quarter of the population. We can bring it up because now this is in an advantage to us. We are in the position to manufacture smart grid shit. Climate change is nothing but a positive for Australia, apart from the fact that it's going to greatly impact our crops and the Great Barrier Reef. But for us, as a people, we stand to become extremely wealthy off it.
Can I talk about the science and the science is very clear. Doesn't mean that every single weather event is because of climate change.
Good answer.
It does mean that the science told us that the events would be more extreme and they'd be more frequent. And that is what we are seeing playing out, whether it be increased bushfires, increased flooding, these extreme weather events that are having an impact. So when we talk about the costs, this is one of the costs. The cost to our economy as well as the cost to our environment of not acting on climate change, of not being a part of the global solution are severe.
Okay, I want to move on. Let's turn to the global outlook. Mr. Dutton, yesterday you jumped on reports that Russia had asked to base some of its military aircraft in Indonesia. You suggested this would represent a catastrophic failure of the Albanese government for not seeing this, not knowing that it was coming. You said the Indonesian president had publicly announced this Russian request when he had not. Indonesia says there won't be Russian planes based there. Do you admit you got that wrong?
Well, David, the reference I was making...
Everything's made up. It's so good. Everything that Dutton has talked about. Remember the terrorism van? It's so good. And here's my promise to the Australian people. A source of energy that I can't deliver. And also on top of that, I've just come up with some fear-mongering campaign. If your source of revenue comes from capital, if that's all you are serving, if you are just serving business interests, everything that you do is just an advertisement. There's no serious concern about governing the country to a brighter future. That's it. It's all just about doing favours for mates. And so, as a result, he has to just make things up. Constantly. There's no reality to anything that he's saying. This is incredible that he's getting caught out like this on a live debate. I'll say this. David Spears is going hard on Dutton. I don't feel happy about this guy. Like, the Sky News guy was a lot fairer, you know? Getting slaughtered here. I'm happy with Mr. Spears today.
Was in relation to sources from the Prabowo government.
So was that a mistake?
It was a mistake, and I'm happy to admit that what we got from the Indonesian authorities in the reports, and the Prime Minister commented on these reports yesterday as well, was that the sources inside the Prabowo government confirmed that that was the case. Now, what we've seen in the last 12 hours or so is that the Russian envoy to Indonesia has confirmed that there have been discussions and obviously there is a concerning closeness in that relationship. And I think the main point here is that the Prime Minister knew nothing of it, nothing of the concerns, nothing of the prospect. The Prime Minister found out about it through a news report, similarly to when the Chinese naval ship circumnavigates our country and he doesn't know about all of the detail until a Virgin pilot provides the detail.
Clearly, Mr Albanese, there are expanding defence cooperations going on between Russia and Indonesia. They held some exercises in November, and just yesterday Russia's Deputy Prime Minister met the Indonesian President in Jakarta. Does this concern you?
Well, that's an extraordinary double down from the alternative Prime Minister of Australia, who verbaled the Indonesian President yesterday. Indonesia will be the fourth largest economy in the world. They are an important partner of Australia. We have an important defence relationship with Indonesia as well. President Prabowo I regard as a personal friend, and we have good relations there. And the idea that you just throw out these comments is just extraordinary. And the fact that we just saw a double down on it as if there's nothing to see here.
Don't you just feel like you're in safer hands? It might just be this idea of looking at the world realistically from where we are, which is a tiny nation surrounded by Asians. But it is just very nice to know that you have someone at the helm that's their first resort, is to sit there and try and hammer things out through official negotiations and sitting around with trained diplomats. Whereas Dutton, you can tell the first thing that he's going to do, drop a nuke. Yeah, let's do that. It's also pathetic because we can't do that. We're pathetic. We're alpha in comparison to New Zealand. That's it.
Why haven't you been to Indonesia since he became president?
Because I've been here domestically, but the president I have spoken with, and the president was here just before his inauguration.
When did you last speak?
He's a regular visitor. We speak regularly.
I don't know. Look, maybe it's just because of my own biases here, but let me know in the comments, especially if you aren't a Labor voter. When he appears, he just looks like a trained grey public servant. He looks like a steady pair of hands. And in today's terrifying world, isn't that just an asset in itself, that you look at him and you think, there's a guy that understands how Canberra works. He spent his life in there. He gets how all the levers are pulled, and he's going to pull them in a responsible way. Doesn't he just exude that energy? And then every time it goes to Peter Dutton, he's like, I know how the levers pull that you don't know exist.
Talking about their cooperation with Russia?
Well, I don't broadcast the private discussions, but we had discussions at the senior levels of government to government. Peter says, why didn't we know something that didn't exist? And what didn't exist, and Indonesia has confirmed the idea of a base being used by the Russian Air Force in West Papua.
Do you accept that, Mr Dutton?
No, I don't. I don't accept that. And I think the Prime Minister's full of bluster here because...
I like his use of the word bluster. Everybody thought that he was going to go for bullshit, but he's on ABC and the kids could be watching.
Again, in relation to national security, this is a government that's ripped $80 billion out of defence. And we've seen the relationship in relation to Indonesia and Russia grow closer.
That is the Liberal Party's response. And I just don't know if it works anymore. I don't think that people are as scared of China as they used to be. Don't you? Don't you feel like that there has just been a vibe shift from that? Everything's kind of worked in Labor's favour over the years, don't you think? When they used to say the Liberals have got $80 billion out of schools and hospitals, no one cared. And now they're trying to pull the whole, Labor's taken $80 billion out of defence. I think everybody's like, hey, well, it's like the schools and hospitals. I don't care anymore, buddy.
Now, Indonesia is an incredibly important partner. I met with the President-elect when he was out here and I had a very good relationship with him as Defence Minister when we were both in that portfolio. I had a lot to do with the previous President in Indonesia as well. So we have a stable, solid relationship. But that means that if there is to be some change in the security settings in our region, that if there is respect for the Albanese government, of course, there is not at the moment, because I see this Prime Minister as weak, then why wouldn't there be a response, or why wouldn't...
You've got to give him this. In terms of perception, especially a guy that's saying, I think we can let out you think you. I really like how disciplined Anthony Albanese has been in terms of just image cultivation, right? But anyway, him saying, they think that he's a weak Prime Minister. Look, I mean, who would you be more scared of? You don't want to fuck around with Dutton, do you?
We've made it 40 minutes in, and finally Donald Trump's name gets mentioned. He has hit Australia with the 10% tariff. He started a trade war with China. He's treating friends and allies with disdain. Mr. Dutton, to you first. Do you trust this president?
Well, David, I said in relation to President Trump that I thought the scenes that we saw coming out of the White House, the treatment of President Zelensky was a disgrace, that it was appalling. And I stand by those comments. And we need to have a very strong working relationship with the United States. Of course we do.
Do you trust him, was the question?
Well, we trust the United States, and I don't know the president. I've not met him. The Prime Minister obviously has been able to.
So you're not willing to say you trust Donald Trump?
I don't know Donald Trump is my point. My point is that who I trust...
Can I just say this? I'm so used to my entire life the press railing against the Labor Party, but this time around, look, you got to call it. Hammering him. All right, let's talk about nuclear power, shall we? Let's talk about your bullshit numbers on nuclear power. All right, next subject after that. Let's talk about climate change. Do you think that's a real thing, Mr. Dutton? Next one after that, defence. Yeah, okay, naturally he's going to go well on that one. And then let's talk about Trump, knowing that he's been trying to walk the tightrope the whole time. This poor man, he has not had a good campaign. I do feel sorry for the old spud. Poor Spuddy. No one deserves to be slammed this hard. Framing the debate under all of these absolute landmines for Dutton. Trump, Christ. He's got the Pauline voters that really want him to sit there and say, make America great again. But he doesn't have mainstream Australia that hates Donald Trump. This is why it was just such a ill when Jacinta Price came up and said, no, we're going to make Australia great again. And you could see Peter Dutton think, all right, well, that's a couple of marginal seats gone. Oh, man. Because the other thing was he was just banking so hard on their win. And it didn't apparate. You know, like he thought there was going to be a big honeymoon after Trump's win. We all did. And then that just completely disappeared after, what, a week? And so he's just left with the bag thinking, Christ, dude, my whole campaign strategy was to just feed off the riz of Donald Trump, like I'm a beta version of Ted Cruz. And it didn't work. It's so sad. And then he's got nothing left. Now he's just got nuclear power, which also everyone's scared of. The press clearly doesn't want Dutton elected this time around. And I honestly think that it is just... I think mostly it's a cultural thing of we can't have that awful racist Peter Dutton at the front. You've obviously got the Murdoch press still barracking for him. But, you know, that whole Tealy type of press, like your Sydney Morning Heralds and obviously the Guardian's going to hate him. ABC. I think that it's just sort of culturally acceptable to shit on him.
My job is to stand up for our country's interests, which is what I did when we negotiated the AUKUS deal with President Biden.
Okay. Mr Albanese, do you trust Donald Trump?
Yeah, I have no reason not to. I've had a couple of discussions with him. In the last discussion, we agreed on a series of words that he would give consideration. Great consideration was the words that he used. And he did that. In the end, he made a decision as part of the US administration to put these tariffs on every country. We got the lowest amount, but we made it very clear that that was an act of self-harm by the United States. The United States enjoys a trade surplus with Australia.
You've got to give Albo this. He is a really skilled statesman. He just is. I don't disregard that Peter Dutton is not an intelligent man. It's just, he's not good at the camera stuff. He really isn't. And Anthony Albanese, don't you think that he's just been saying things in such a measured way off the bat, you know? So he's like, do you trust Trump? And he's like, yeah, I trust him. I've got no reason not to trust him. He said that he was going to bring out tariffs and that he did it. And so he's sort of being diplomatic and also taking a dig at him at the same time.
Just while we're at it, do you trust China's president, Xi Jinping?
I have no reason not to either. China's our major trading partner. 1 in 4 Australian jobs depends upon trade. It is in Australia's national interest to have a good economic relationship with China. We'll cooperate where we can, we'll disagree where we must, but we'll engage in our national interests.
Don't you think that there's two acceptable opinions when it comes to China in Australia? There's either they're communists that are coming for your property, and if they don't take it by buying it at the auctions, they'll take it by force. And then the other one is China's our biggest trading partner. We need China. There's two acceptable opinions, much like there is with everything else, right? There's the sort of the free trade and element of the press and the protectionist element of the press. As a result of that, you just have to frame things in a way that speaks to the general public. And Albo's done it again. He's done it again. Whereas you can tell with Dutton, it'd be, me smash China. I smash China now like bug.
Well, David, again, I don't know the president of China, but I believe very strongly in the relationship that we have because of the reasons the Prime Minister outlines. It's important for our economic stability and our sovereignty. In government, we negotiated 11 free trade agreements. This government's only been able to negotiate one. Of the 11, one was with China. I want to see the relationship grow and I want to see trust in the relationship, but we have to stand up for our sovereignty. We have to have a respectful relationship. I had a very good meeting with the Premier from China when he was out only a couple of months ago, and we can build the relationship.
And you trust him?
Well, I spoke to him across the table, so I haven't done business with him and shaken hands and seen whether somebody's honoured that deal, but I don't have any reason to distrust him.
So the Liberal Party have changed again, and they're pretty much just reflecting what the Labor Party is saying now, which is they're good trading partners, and we also have to be wary at the same time. Which, honestly, look, good answer.
In the agreements that I've reached with Premier Lee, they have all resulted in precisely what was agreed on both sides. And now, as a result of that, $20 billion of trade with China has been restored.
Okay, a lot of people are
because
wondering...
of the free trade agreement that we signed.
Okay.
To be
A lot of people
to be clear.
It didn't operate for the entire time in which your last term. There were no discussions.
It's another one. Diplomacy. The Liberals just can't win it. It's like as soon as you get a little bit of context into it, it's obvious that Albo's the winner for it.
The trade dispute with China is particularly concerning to many in the US economy.
So we reserve this for the United States?
No. Well, we'll negotiate with the United States rather than with you, David, with respect.
I'm going to try.
With respect.
This is the best debate dynamic I've ever seen. You have David Spears clowning on Dutton, and then you have Albo clowning on David Spears.
Mr. Dutton, you've said you'd get a deal very quickly with Donald Trump, that he'd drop these tariffs. No other leaders managed this. How do you plan to pull this one off?
Well, we did actually. In the 45th presidency, when President Trump was first elected, we were able to negotiate as a government then an outcome where Australia was exempt.
So how would you do it now?
Well, again, as we did...
Malcolm Turnbull at the time...
Well, as we did last time...
It's a lot harder now.
As we did last time, we were able to leverage relationships. Unfortunately, sadly for our country, Ambassador Rudd can't get into the West Wing and can't get a conversation.
What does leverage the relationships mean in practice?
Well, it means, as we did last time, David, we look at people...
I'm really excited about what his answer is to this, because all you ever hear is the reports of it in the press, yeah, that we'll leverage our relationship. I've got special access to Peter Dutton. Yeah, of course he does. That's just a nice way of saying I can wank. I've got special access to President Trump. I really want to hear how.
With whom we have a relationship, contacts both within the West Wing, within the administration, and those external to the administration. The trouble is that Anthony didn't think that...
Okay, all right. So I know people, trust me.
Unfortunately, Australia, our beef producers and others are now facing this 10% tariff. And
so you've got closer ties with the Trump administration?
I think we have the ability, as we demonstrated before, to talk to the administration. And the mistruth that was spoken before by the Prime Minister about John Howard, the point I make, which is, I think, accepted by most sensible people, is that, as John Howard agrees with, that we should be doing everything we can to enhance the relationship, to make our two countries stronger together. We've been with the United States for the last 100 years.
It sounds like your answer to this is because you've got closer relationships with the Trump team, you'd be able to get a deal.
We have, I think, a capacity demonstrated. We've already done that, David, and we demonstrated it in the first presidency that we're able to get an exemption when other countries weren't. Right. So all I'm saying is that...
So everyone else in the world can't get it, you would?
Well, as you know... when other countries...
Everyone on stage is bullying Dutton. This is the first time that I've agreed with the Libs. The ABC is a pro-Labor outlet. I've always said that the ABC is a reflection of whoever is in government, but I did not know that Labor would be able to turn the ABC around to the point that they would get a fair hearing on it in just 3 short years. I thought that the contracts would take way longer to expire than that.
The point I was making in relation to defence is that the Americans came to our aid in the Battle of the Coral Sea. We've stood with America through every battle. It is an incredible relationship. I think in relation to critical minerals, you can look at offtake agreements, you can look at supply chain assurity for the United States so that their weapons systems and their guided weapons can be constructed.
This has to bring everything back to weapons, and one day there's going to be a war, and let's ensure that that happens. When Albanese is talking about trade, he's talking about building the future of the world and places that people can live in, and his immediate thing when he thinks of critical minerals is, yeah, guidance systems for missiles.
A final one before we hear your closing statements. We do hear a lot from both of you in this campaign about how dire things would be for Australia if the other bloke wins. And maybe that's just the nature of campaigning, but you two have known each other a very long time. I've witnessed you both over the dispatch box in Parliament. You're able to have a chat. You seem to get on. I just want to ask...
I don't want you to overstate it. This will be the kiss of death for both of us.
I will give Dutton this. For a man that's extremely boring and used to be a cop, he does have some good quips, doesn't he? Man, he's got it. He's got a little jab here and there.
Would it really be a disaster for the country, or is this just a bit of political hype if the other guy won? Mr. Albanese?
I think there are very different values that we have. I can have a private discussion with Peter. I can call him round to the office, and he does so regularly. But I don't take this personally. But I have a very different view of Australia. And I think that Peter has taken his party to a more conservative bent than it has ever been. And I want very much to be able to continue the work that our government's been able to achieve.
All right, Mr. Dutton.
Well, David, on matters of national security or issues that are important for our country, the Prime Minister and I can have a conversation and have on a number of occasions to find a bipartisan position to advance that cause. But as Anthony points out, we've got different visions and different pathways, and it really hurts me to see young Australians completely locked out of the housing market. It hurts me to see young families putting off having kids under this government. And the reason the Prime Minister is running a scare campaign at the moment is that he doesn't want to talk about the reality of the last 3 years.
All right, time for your closing statements. Mr. Dutton, to you first.
Well, David, as we go to the 3rd of May, people need to reflect on what's happened in our country, in your lives over the course of the last 3 years. And as I said in my opening remarks, can you answer the question, are you better off today than you were 3 years ago? And for the vast majority of Australians, the answer is no. We have a positive plan for our country. We have a desire to manage our economy. And if people vote for the Liberal and National parties at the next election, we'll successfully manage the economy to clean up Labor's mess. We'll bring inflation down, which brings interest rates down. We'll restore the dream of home ownership. If Australians vote for their Liberal and National Party candidates at the next election, they'll get a 25-cent reduction in the price of petrol and diesel and $1,200 back, the tax that you've paid to help you cope with the pressures that you're under at the moment.
Look, I'll give Dutton, he has figured out some sweeteners that he can chuck at people. I don't think that anybody really cares about the fuel excise, do they? The $1,200, I think people will go, yeah, hell yeah, I'll go to H&R Block and this time I'm getting back 1,500 because normally I only get 300, just in case you didn't get the maths straight away. It's a lot better than what he had maybe 3 days ago, which was nukes. I can't believe that anybody sincerely thinks that Peter Dutton is going to address the housing crisis. Everything that he has suggested so far is massive amounts of fuel to the fire. I mean, the superannuation thing is so egregious. That's way worse than him announcing, oh, we're just going to get rid of mortgages. That's way worse.
And reduce the problem of crime as it exists in our communities, in our suburbs, across the country. My vision for our country is to make us a safer, more prosperous nation. And on the 3rd of May, I ask for the support of the Australian people.
Thank you, Mr. Dutton. Mr. Albanese, your closing statement.
This election is a real choice, a choice between Labor's plans to build Australia's future and the Coalition's plans for cuts when it comes to education. We have schools funding, childcare, making it more affordable, our universities accord, or a plan to get rid of free TAFE, to cut schools like happened last time with $30 billion of cuts on Medicare will strengthen it. You know, people know that we believe in Medicare, and they know that the last time they were in government and Peter was the health minister, they tried to introduce an abolition of bulk billing. That is a choice that they have. On climate change, we've heard tonight, no acceptance of the science of climate change. We accept it and we're acting on it with renewables backed by gas, batteries, and making sure that we deliver on climate change and on renewable energy. When it comes to agenda issues that we didn't confront today, we've had a women's health program, the most significant that we have had. We have had paid parental leave. We have had a gender program that puts women at the centre of our economic and social agenda, and the coalition have not done anything on any of those issues. On our place in the world, we need to have a considered approach, a diplomatic approach, not the shoot from the hip approach that we've seen during this campaign.
Thank you both very much for joining us this evening. We do wish you well for the remainder of the campaign.
Don't you think that that's probably enough? Thank you for sitting around, and it's great that we all just learned the issues together, isn't it? It's nice to see that the youth care.